Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Lil Dudes Insect Academy podcast. I'm here in Washington, D.C. at the ESA conference this year, the Entomology conference, and I'm sitting across the table from my new friend, Mitchell. So welcome to the show, Mitchell. Go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
Thanks for the invite. Yeah, my name is Mitchell Kirsch. I'm an entomologist with SC Johnson out of Racine, Wisconsin. And I specifically specialized in on-skin mosquito repellents. And I also serve as a mosquito steward, so I educate all of my fellow colleagues about mosquitoes. And I'm also the disease steward, so if they have questions about diseases, they come to me.
Nice. Okay, yeah, and we'll get more into that in just a minute, but let's first talk about your schooling. Where did you go to school? What were some of the things you studied, and how was that whole experience for you?
Yeah, so in high school, I had this amazing biology teacher.
Yeah.
And he made me very confident in my ability to do science, and specifically like biology. So I knew going into college, I went to college at UW-Madison.
Okay.
Yeah, great school. So I knew going into college I wanted to do biology and global health because I kind of like the epidemiology idea when I'm doing some disease tracking.
Yeah.
Numbers and diseases always sound fun to me. So then as I progressed through school, I got a BS in biology, a BS in zoology, and then I got certificates in global health and environmental studies.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, and then after that, I worked in a mosquito lab for about a year and a half, and then I went to grad school at University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I studied entomology there. So I never actually took an entomology course as an undergrad, which I've heard is actually fairly common for some entomologists.
Yeah, for undergrad, there's all kinds of paths, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what got me into it was the diseases. I love the disease side of entomology.
Yeah, okay, very interesting. And there's a lot there that we can get to in a minute. But, so what have you been doing recently with SC Johnson? Like, what are some of your roles there, and what have some of the research been that you do?
Yeah, so at SC Johnson, my role is basically to support projects. So I'm on around 10 different projects where I'm the subject matter expert on mosquitoes and repellents.
Okay.
And that doesn't just include mosquitoes, it also includes kind of whatever marketing wants to put on the label, right? So if there's ticks, I'll also do stuff with ticks. And then we got sandflies maybe, or even black flies. We have to figure out how to test those according to different guidelines. Depending on which country we're working in, there's different country guidelines, all that stuff. So that's kind of what I normally do. The long and short of my job is I get volunteers to stick their arm in a cage of mosquitoes with repellent on their arm, and I see how long it lasts.
Nice.
Yeah, and I say volunteers because they're actually volunteers, and people actually want to do this. Usually it's like the chemists that work on the formulas. They want to see how the mosquitoes are behaving and reacting to it. And then it's also we have such a diverse group of people with different backgrounds, different roles on our team. So we've got supply chain people, we've got packaging engineers, we've got project managers. So all these people want to see how the formula, potential new formula works. And they come in and volunteer their arms for me.
Yeah.
So my average day, I probably have somewhere between 3 and 5 meetings, between half an hour and an hour long. A lot of it's just listening and chiming in when there's specific questions about what my expertise is in.
Right.
So my average day is I get to work and then I look at emails, and I may have some just strange requests come through my inbox. Somehow my name got to somebody, which is great. And then they think, oh, Mitchell knows about insects and other arthropods. Let's ask him a question.
Nice.
So I get some really interesting questions. I think the most fun, thought-provoking one I've had recently is, why are there no mosquitoes on beaches?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about that. Why are there no mosquitoes?
Why are there no mosquitoes on beaches? Yeah, great question. So my answer to that question was kind of like, oh, usually on beaches it's kind of windy, right? And mosquitoes aren't the best flyers. They're not super strong flyers. Now, there are specific mosquitoes, specifically in like New Zealand area, that live in crab holes. And so those mosquitoes are on beaches, right? They're a little bit stronger flyers, you know. And so part of that, when I get those kind of questions, are educating team members and marketers. A lot of what I do is based on what marketing wants me to do. And they may have ideas that aren't really feasible, and learning how to work with them and tell them that's not a great idea. Like, let's think about it a little bit differently. Then I also said that, you know, on beaches, it's a really ubiquitous environment. There's not much cover for mosquitoes. Like, all this wind's going to annoy them. Like,
And then they reproduce in fresh water, too, so that's another problem, right?
Right. Yeah. So these beaches, usually it's salt water, right?
Yeah.
Now, there are some mosquitoes that are like brackish water mosquitoes, or they're like mixes, but mixed water. But, yeah, those are more like salt marshes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's really interesting. Yeah, so here at ESA, what at the conference this year, what are you doing this year? Are you just hanging out, or did you have some talks to go to, or what's going on?
Oh, I love all the talks.
Yeah,
like, I can't get enough of them. Running room to room to room to room, like every 10 to 12 minutes.
Yeah,
right. It's a lot. But then also, SC Johnson is a sponsor here, so we have a booth that we get to work at. We get to give people a bunch of different things that say SC Johnson.
Nice.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, my favorite thing is just seeing my friends. I've made a lot of friends at these over the past 3 years.
Right.
Get to see people from all over the country and internationally too.
Nice.
So talking with my friends, seeing their talks, seeing, like, watching their research progress is really interesting too.
Right.
Like, I remember when they were just starting some of these projects. Now they're fully done, and now some of them have like PhDs, which is great.
For sure.
I get to make fun of them and call them doctors. Like,
yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love coming to these conventions.
That's awesome. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about your work with the. You said you were really interested in the diseases that insects carry. So what is so fascinating about that, and what have you sort of learned through that, and what have you worked on?
Yeah. So the thing that really piqued my interest when I was in undergrad was when I learned that, you know, you can have a disease in your blood. A mosquito can bite you, like, wait a week, wait for that incubation period, and then bite me and give that disease that you just had in your blood. And I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So that's what has kind of kept me going. And then, of course, mosquitoes are the deadliest animal in the world. They kill more people than people do, right?
By a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like double almost.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I specifically like viruses a little more than parasites, but that's just kind of what my background is. You know, in growing up in Wisconsin, we had a few cases of West Nile virus. You know, Chicago, which is another big city that's very close to Wisconsin, they have tons of cases of West Nile virus every year.
Right.
So it's interesting, you know, the Chicago and Milwaukee are like 2 hours away by car, right? Maybe an hour and a half if you drive fast. But they have very, very different West Nile virus numbers every single year. It's really interesting to think about why that is.
Yeah. So, So how did you originally get into entomology and disease? Vector-borne disease, isn't that what it's called? Or
yeah.
So, how did you originally get interested in all of that? Like, was there a moment, or were you kind of always sort of into it? So, how did you get into this?
There was a moment, and it's how I started every single one of my grad school admission essays. I was sitting in this roughly 500-person lecture on global health, and so this was a global health course. It was being taught by a nutritionist, so we just spent the past 2 months talking about corn nutrition, which, to me isn't very interesting, but I know some other people, they were kind of interested in that stuff, right? So then in comes Dr. Paskowitz, and she's a exceptional, specifically a tick-borne disease biologist out of UW-Madison. And she starts talking about communicable diseases and vector-borne diseases. And I felt like she was talking directly to me, which is pretty impressive in a 500-person lecture,
Yeah.
right? So then I just went up and introduced myself to her. And her and Dr. Lyric Bartholomew, they run this center out of Madison called the Midwest Center of Excellence for Vector-Borne Disease.
Okay.
And so they said, oh, you should apply for this fellowship. So I did, and then I got it. I started working for both of them. I was dragging for ticks, long days up north in kind of the Lime Highway of Wisconsin, upper Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Did that for a while. And then after nymphal tick season, I transitioned to the mosquito lab, where I spent a lot of time running around the state, collecting mosquito traps, collecting mosquito traps, jumping in and out of big tire piles, looking for mosquito larvae, which was fun, dirty, and hot. But overall, great experience, and I love doing it.
That's really awesome. Yeah, and I love hearing how everybody got into entomology so differently from each other. Like,
I was never interested in it as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's not necessarily about the insect. It's about the diseases. And I know you can't say this too loud at an entomological conference. But, like, my threshold of caring is if the insect carries a disease to a human or an animal, I find that interesting. I love it. But if it doesn't, insects are still exceptionally cool, right?
Yeah.
And all these insects, like, the evolution of insects is just mind-boggling, right?
And the diversity.
So many of them, like you just said. So, so to me, it's all about the diseases, how mosquitoes and other insects can carry diseases to both humans and animals.
Fascinating. Yeah, and this is obviously very important work, like very applicable and a big problem for sure.
It certainly helps that there tends to be a lot of funding in it compared to every other entomological.
I could see why. Yeah, it's very directly applicable and easy to explain why it's so important, right, to anyone.
Yeah,
so.
If there never was like the Zika concern in Brazil in that 2015, 2016 era, I wouldn't be who I am today because all of this funding that I basically started my career on was from this almost scare of mosquito-borne diseases in the United States.
Wow. Yeah, I can only imagine that, and that totally makes sense to me. Yeah. So moving on to who do you kind of look up to? Like, who's your inspiration with this, either in the world of science or not? Like, who pushes you, whether you know them or not? Like, who do you look up to?
Who do I look up to? Let's see. I worked with a postdoc student at UW-Madison in Dr. Pasquet's lab, the tick lab, and her name was Dr. Bineke Braun. She was from the Netherlands, and both her and I spent a long time out in the field dragging for ticks together. Yeah. And she just did amazing work. And she was such a great mentor during my time with her. I was able to learn so many things and able to really feel like I contributed to her research, the lab's research, and like all of, science.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I love to hear that. Yeah. And in your spare time, like when you're not working, or maybe this could be science related or not, what are some other hobbies or activities that you enjoy in your spare time?
I really enjoy road cycling.
Okay.
And I get to do that with my dad because he likes it too. So that's awesome. Yeah, it's so fun. So I like road cycling. I'll go out for a few hours most weekends, but of course in the winter in Wisconsin it gets a little cold.
I bet.
And by a little I mean a lot cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so usually in the winter I actually like downhill skiing. There's a hill not too far from where I live that's not very big.
Oh, nice.
It's a hill that I like skiing at, and so I just like being outside, right? And I know a lot of entomologists are like that. They like to be outside. They like to be out in the field, walking around, looking in weird places to see if they can find any insects.
Yeah.
Like in my car, I keep an insect collection kit.
That's
which
awesome.
I know is not a normal thing for most people, but I bet you here at
It's
ESA,
pretty normal here.
yeah,
Yeah.
you could find quite a few little mini insect collection kits.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so moving forward, like, what are your big plans for the future? What do you want to maybe continue your education, maybe? What are some other, big goals for your future?
Big goals for future. Yeah, I think so. I have a master's of science, and
Yeah.
I've always been like on the edge of doing a PhD, like because I'm talking to all my friends who are doing PhDs, and I
Mm-hmm.
know that like feasibly I could do it, and I think it would be pretty fun to do it. But I think at my current position, that wouldn't necessarily help me a lot because of what I do, and a lot of the education I get from my current position is on the job. It's not from my degree.
Right.
Like when I got hired, my knowledge about mosquitoes was never questioned, which was really cool. Like they trust me and they trust my knowledge of mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm.
But in the future, I think because our company is such a big company, we have a tuition match thing where
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the big one great benefit for working for industry, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get your education paid for.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about doing a master's of public health.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know what my manager would say about that, though, because I don't know if she would find it useful.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would find it really useful. I think that general knowledge of public health would be something that would be interesting to me, and I think it'd open up more doors to work at like governmental agencies like CDC or just the state government.
Yeah.
And then so I'm kind of leaning toward doing a master's of public health for fun, and because I want to, and because my company will pay for it, right?
Yeah.
And then I think after that, like a larger scale goal would be to continue working for SC Johnson for a few more years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think ultimately I want to end up at a state like Department of Health Services, more of like the numbers tracking for disease control. And
Yeah.
and I really enjoy what you're doing with the communications aspect as well.
Yeah. Gives you some freedom to sort of explore that.
Yeah, you can do, like I've got a few friends that are extension agents, and they can't, in their positions, they can't do public health consulting.
Okay.
But that's all I'd want to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So I think working for like a Department of Human Health Services or something of the sort at a state level would be really fascinating and fun for me as well.
For sure.
And I think
Yeah.
a master's of public health would help me get to that step.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, you have, big plans. That's really awesome to hear. Yeah. So lastly, before we wrap this up, where can my viewers go to, where can we go to learn more about you or what you're working on or what you're doing? Do you happen to have social media or a website or maybe the company? Where can we go to learn more about you?
Yeah, so I'm not very active on social media.
Yeah.
I do have a LinkedIn. If you search just Mitchell Kirsch, that should come up.
All right.
I have pretty distinctive hair.
Yeah.
So if you see a guy with long shoulder length curly hair, that'd be me.
Yep.
And of course at scjohnson.com. I hope that's the right address.
Yeah.
I want to check that.
Yeah. Pretty easy to find, I'm sure.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of like info and things like that. Specifically, if you look into like the off repellents, because that's the majority of what I do. Off repellents.
Yeah. Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This was really fun. Really great talk, getting to know you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bradon.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Lil Dudes Insect Academy podcast. If you enjoyed it, definitely consider dropping a follow on whatever platform you're listening on. And also, Lil Dudes Insect Academy is a nonprofit organization. So if you're passionate about science communication, entomology, outreach, and education, and you enjoy what we're doing and how we're solving that gap, then consider heading over to our website and donating there, or becoming a monthly donor via our Patreon, which is also linked in the show notes of this episode. Yeah, so share this episode with one of your friends, and tune in next week. I will see you all next week, and with that, keep on bugging.